I really enjoyed Mr. Tank Dumbro this morning. I really did enjoy his talk. Ton Dumbro. It was a great job talking about the AS&P teams. And it made me think back to way back when. I went to the very first GMTSS meeting there ever was. It was at J.R. and Lawrence House. I think maybe the only two other people in this room that might have been there might be Andy and Jim. There weren't a lot of people in the GMTSS. There was one local seminar in New York State and 2 UBPs. Today there's, I think, eight or nine locals and 20 UBPs. And I got asked to speak and teach them how we organize all these things, and I had learned this system through a guy named Mark Januszewski about how you set up teams, and we called it the AS&P team, and that's when we introduced this. That was a good 21 years ago. The way I got involved in the GMTSS is very interesting. I'll just share that with you quickly. I got involved with the company. I started growing very quickly. I was hitting pin level after pin level. I was working 100 hours a week, and I needed this system because I had no time, and I had to leverage something to continue to grow. And I was so frustrated that there was only one local in my area and 2 UBPs, and I was trying to grow outside of my area, but there was nothing to plug people into. And the 2 UBPs, one of them was run by, for all intents and purposes, true story gangsters. I mean, really. These guys, I can think of the names of some of these guys. And the other one was run by my sponsor, who I barely spoke to. Some of you know the history there. So I wrote a letter at the time to this woman, Elizabeth Weber, who I barely knew. I think I might have shook hands with her once. That went unanswered, so I finally called her, and I got her on the phone, and I was going off. It was just complaint after complaint after complaint, all these problems. These good old boys are controlling everything. There's no meetings. The meetings that are run are terrible. And she said to me, "No, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't you just get recognized at the convention as a new director?" I said, "Yes, I did." And they just called me, and they asked me if I want to be part of their advisory council. And she said, "Good. I have the answer to all of your problems." I said, "Well, I'm all ears." And she said, "You are the new district coordinator. Now fix it." She hung up. That's a true story. So do we have a clicker here? There we go. So I like that Ton talked a little bit about having fun, and he showed you some video, and Stacy reinforced that, and Bonnie mentioned it as well, and you do have to have fun. I mean, we just had a regional convention up north in New England. That's a big event, thousands of people, a lot of pressure on all of us, me in particular, to pull off that event with, thousands of people, 16 different speakers, corporate team members, several banquets and reception. I mean, it's enormous. And I tend to get very serious, but we really let loose this year with a little bit of fun, didn't we? And you guys could go watch the videos if you don't believe me on that. In fact, I even had David White dressed up as a duck, and Wendy and Bonnie were 2 of my chickens, and Amber Yang and Min Lu were my geese, and Benson Chen was my lead actor in the play. It was really a lot of fun. All right, but, fun aside, we are the caretakers of this business organization. We are the senior managers and the middle managers in a business organization that really holds the whole framework of Market America together. And I'm sure in your hometowns you have all types of organizations and clubs, Lions Club, Knights of Columbus, whatever it might be. They all have a structure. They have rules, they have policies, they have procedures that have to be followed, whether it's the local Little League or the PTA, whatever it might be. And we have the same. And one of the first things I asked for when they asked me if I would take a turn along with David and Stacy as the directors of the GMTSS was, can we go back to having an annual GMTSS meeting? Because I really believe that without that, this number of years we've gone without that, we've lost a lot of the translation in the GMTSS, and it's amazing to me how a lot of the rules are discarded or they're not paid attention to, and it's all just because we don't reinforce it. People turn over their position to somebody else, and the information doesn't get passed down. So there is this part of it, and we have to talk about it. And I'm not going to bore you with bank statements and EFRs this time around. So not to get involved in all of that, all the numbers and the boxes and the squares, but earlier this year, after a number of calls regarding various all-star events and the GMTSS calling various local coordinators, saying, I see that on the EFR it says that there's an amount that was paid as a back end to the speaker. I'm just checking to make sure it was deposited in your account. It was an all-star event. And I said, why do we have to go through this, all these phone calls? Why don't we just make a new EFR? So we came up with the all-star EFR, which calculates it for you, and there's no questions left, which is fine. But then I got a number of calls, actually a few from people sitting right in this room, who brought another issue to light, and that was, lots of times, lots of us get asked to visit various areas. I'm going to Jessica's area soon, and Jeff Rogers called me and said, look, we'd love to have you come to Syracuse and do a local seminar, but I got to be honest, we're a growing area, but with these honorariums are sky high, I don't think we can afford it. Is there any chance? And of course there is. Sure, I'll come. I don't have a problem with that. And we've had a lot of people, of course, agree to come in and help growing areas and not get paid their full honorarium, their just honorarium. Okay, that's fine. But then I've gotten a number of calls where speakers have called and said, I did agree to go in and help, but I just don't think I'm being treated fairly at this point. Why is that? Well, they told me that it was a growing area. They didn't sell a lot of tickets, and they couldn't afford the honorarium. I went in and did it, but lo and behold, they sold a ton of tickets. They had way more than enough to pay my honorarium, and it's all getting paid out to the meeting coordinator and the association, and I don't find that fair, and I tend to agree with them. I called a lot of you guys, and all of you agreed as well. So we decided to make that a little simpler, and we came up with this negotiated honorarium, if you will, EFR, in addition to the local seminar EFR. Now, just to make sure we're all on board with this negotiated or reduced honorarium EFR, right? It's pretty simple. You don't have to think too much. You just plug the numbers in. First of all, we have a new requirement. We have to have requirements. And the new requirement is if you ask someone to come into your area and accept a payment of less than their published honorarium, you have to reduce that agreement to writing and have a speaker agreement with them. More on that in a minute. The reason is that, I'll get into more detail in a minute, but the reason behind it is that 4 or 5 months later, after you made that initial call to invite someone in, their recollection of what took place on that phone call and yours sometimes differs. And the meeting is over, and the reconciliation of the event doesn't go the way they thought it was going to go, but you think that that's exactly what you talked about. Well, put it in writing in black and white. So let's go back to this reduced honorarium EFR. Very simple. It looks exactly like the regular EFR. So you plug in at the top where it says honorarium. You put in whatever you agreed to pay. So Jim is coming to my area. His honorarium is probably, let's call it $3,000. I don't know. And he agreed to come in. If you can cover $1,000, I'm good with that. If you do good in sales and you can come up with more, great, but I'm good, $1,000. So you fill in $1,000 for the honorarium. You fill in all your other expenses, and down at the bottom it shows the net profit on the event. Well, if his honorarium was $3,000 and your net profit on the event was $3,500, after you paid the $1,000, you certainly had well enough money to pay his full honorarium. The form at that point will stop you. It's pretty ingenious. A little pop-up window comes up. You put his PIN level at the top so we know what his honorarium should be. You put an amount that you paid him so we know that, and we know how much money you have left. And if it calculates that you have enough to pay it, it will stop you and just say you have to use the standard EFR. And you go back and use the EFR and pay the full honorarium. And if you don't have enough to pay the full honorarium, so his honorarium was $3,000, you put in $1,000 in the honorarium spot. In the end, you have $1,500 left. Well, that's not enough to pay the full honorarium, but you're going to see the breakdown at the bottom is going to be 80% of the $1,500 goes to the speaker, which will get him a little closer to his full honorarium, but not all the way there. And then 10% goes to the meeting coordinator and 10% the association. So I hope you guys all use that. And then we go to the speaker agreement. So if you're going to bring someone in a speaker agreement, now we're going to require you to do it if you bring someone in for a reduced honorarium. My advice is I've used speaker agreements since 1997, 98, when I was first put into GMTSS. I've used them all these years. When you come to speak at my regional, you're going to get an agreement, right? And you're going to sign it. So we recommend that everybody use a speaker agreement every time you bring a speaker in. It just makes good common sense. You're contracting to bring a speaker in to speak to your organization. There's a lot of money flying. There's a lot of considerations. Just put it down. So we put a speaker agreement in the back office in unfranchised.com, right? We put a standard speaker agreement in, and we put one in specifically for this reduced honorarium situation, and it's called a reduced honorarium speaker agreement. And it just spells out the terms. And you don't have to use this one per se. You can write your own agreement. This is one I've used almost word for many, many years. You could take it and customize it, but it basically says, Dear Jim, the Long Island Unfranchised Owner Association is excited to have you as a speaker for our upcoming local seminar to be held at the Holiday Inn in Westbury, Long Island, right? And then it says the event will begin at and end at. Do you know how many times I go to a local seminar? I don't know what hours it is, when it starts, when it ends, how much time I'm supposed to speak, and I'm calling in the days and hours leading up. And I know a lot of you have gone through the same thing. Of course, no locals coordinator in here would do something like that. It does happen. So we're going to tell them everything, what time it starts, what time it ends, approximately how many people they're going to be speaking to. We'll arrange your lodging at XYZ Hotel for 2 nights, Friday night and Saturday night. We'll pick you up at the airport or arrange pickup at the airport. We'll send details on that when it's closer to your arrival time. We spell out the airfare. We'll be covering the cost of your round-trip coach airfare from your Oconomowoc, wherever it is, to LaGuardia Airport in New York. If you choose to book your own airfare, well, I'll allow the speaker to book their own airfare as long as they check in with me before they actually pay for it. If I know the round-trip airfare from Milwaukee to New York is $425, then if he's somewhere in the ballpark, he tells me it's $525, okay. But if he tells me it's $840, I'm probably going to say, look, I'll pay $450 towards the airfare. That's the standard going rate right now. If you want to have some upgraded class or something like that, that's fine, and go ahead and upgrade. That's on you. So you spell out all the terms of the agreement. We'll be paying you a $200 separate additional check to pay your travel expenses to and from the airport, parking, whatever. If they're driving, you want to spell that out as well. We'll be compensating you 58 cents per mile for round trip from here, and you calculate it. Go on Google Maps and figure it out. It's 600 miles round trip, so we'll be sending you a check for, $340, whatever it is. We'll send that along with your honorarium 30 days in advance of the meeting. Spell out all the terms of the association, including how the honorarium is going to get paid, and then at the bottom it tells you what's going to happen if more money is generated, what's going to happen with the rest of the money. Have them sign it, have them return it. It's just common sense. If you do download the agreement from the back office, there's actually a pretty decent set of frequently asked questions on the back. Everything from, well, the speaker told us that they want us to pay for their airfare and they're bringing their spouse. Do we have to pay for both? Well, the answer is if their spouse is speaking at the meeting, absolutely you have to pay for both. If you're inviting them in and they're both speaking, yes. If their spouse is not really part of the event, you really are not required to pay their airfare unless you feel that your ticket sale is going to be such that you don't have an issue with it. But if you think you're tight on expenses, especially if you're paying a reduced honorarium, you know you're tight, then you're flying the speaker in. If they want to bring their spouse, really, that's up to them. So other things like that are on the back here, and it's worth taking a look at. I mentioned the speaker who wants upgraded. There's other things like I got a call from one of you earlier this year where they had a speaker coming in who doesn't like to fly. They want to drive. And I said, okay, so what's the problem? Well, we have to compensate them for driving. I said, yeah, 58 cents a mile, figure it out. They were like, okay, but it's like 1,200 miles. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. So the airline ticket was like $320. The driving thing was like $800. I was like, wait, that's just, wait a minute. So 1,200 miles is a couple of tanks of gas. I would tell them I'm going to send you a check to compensate you for the cost of a round-trip flight, and that's going to be used for your travel expenses, I doubt they'll have a problem with it. So if the driving distance is excessive, don't feel you have to stick to that 58-cent stuff. So all of that is on there. How much speaking time they have. This is something we're going to deal with at some point throughout the weekend here, is how much speaking time you give to your guest speaker, just to headline it, and we'll get in more detail later, but a lot of you like to have the minimum 5-hour and 30-minute local seminar these days. It's a common thing, right? And you know that you have to have 5 hours of speaking time, of training time for the local seminar. And you bring a speaker in and you call Jim, and Jim says, well, how much time am I speaking? And you go, well, 5 hours or 4.5 hours. Man, that's a lot of time to give to the guest speaker, number one. And number two, it leaves you no time to feature anybody else from your local area. You know, you don't have to give. When I bring Mark Ashley to my regional convention, he gets 2 hours of an entire weekend-long event. And we get plenty of Mark, don't we? Bonnie, Wendy? I mean, you don't have to have your speaker speak every minute of your seminar. Leave time for more people. We'll more on that later. Anyway, speaking time. So you spell it out on the agreement. Now, a couple of little details. Appointing new meeting coordinators. So all of you constantly have changeover in your UBP coordinator. Somebody leaves the position, somebody new is coming in. Maybe they left voluntarily. Maybe you pushed them out because they weren't doing the job. Maybe they just aren't meeting their requirements. But there's always turnover. It's constant. Same thing, district coordinators with your local coordinators, or regional directors with your local coordinators, right? There's turnover. Here's the process. When you have a new person that you want to appoint as a UBP coordinator or a local coordinator, number one, in advance, just make sure they're the right pin level. Don't go through a whole bunch of hoops and then we find out that this is somebody who hasn't gone through the pay cycle yet. They have to be a certified executive coordinator, at least to be a UBP coordinator, and a senior master or above to be a local coordinator, but there's more than that. I mean, Ton Dombro talked about mixing it up. Mixed lines of sponsorship. Don't keep everything to your own group. It's critically important. It's important in how people perceive you and as to what they perceive as the fairness in the area and their ability to grow a business. You got to almost force yourself sometimes. If you have two UBPs and one of those UBP coordinators is in your group and you have a perfect person in your group to handle the other one, and you know what? My advice is find somebody else. You got to mix it up. You can't have everything to your group. So you have to talk to leaders in the area and decide who's the best choice for these positions, whether it's a local, whether it's a UBP. And then what you do is you have them submit an agreement, right? The UBP coordinator agreement or the local seminar coordinator agreement. But that's not all. They need to open a bank account to manage their GMTSS activities. They have to do that. And we're not going to wait. Because when we wait, what happens is we put the agreement in, we pop them in the system, they're now submitting meetings, they come up to their first meeting, and where are they putting the money? They can't put it in the same bank account where they pay their dry cleaning bill and their rent. They have to have a separate account. So because that happens so often, and it does, we decided let's just not approve them, finalize their appointment until they submit proof that they've opened that separate bank account. So they have to open a bank account. There's one more requirement now. You might notice that's new. You're going to see this come up, and we'll post it to the Facebook Live, and then we'll put it in the back office. Something new. It's called an orientation checklist, if you will. So if you're a new local coordinator, you filled out the agreement, you submitted it, you mailed the signed copy with the ink signature to the office, you showed us that you have a bank statement open, all good. You still need to turn in your orientation checklist. The outgoing local coordinator, and if they won't do it for some strange reason, then the district or the regional director will have to go through a simple checklist with you and check all the boxes, and we want to make sure that they explain to you what an EFR is, how to fill it out, what a reduced honorarium EFR is, what an all-star EFR is, what a bank statement is, and what the bank summary is, and how they correlate to each other, how you identify individual expenses on the bank statement and whatnot. This may seem really tedious to a lot of you, going back to Mr. Dombro over there, he explained that there was a local coordinator that walked off with $10,000. This is not an isolated thing. This has happened multiple times this year, okay? And what's really frustrating is when you find a local coordinator that has so messed up their account, either because they intentionally personally abused it and borrowed the money from the account, or they're just incompetent, and the money is all missing, and we're finally going to just move this person out of the position because they're not doing the job and put someone else in, and we're left with a mess, and we can't figure out why. Wait a minute, we have a speaker coming in next week. We sold, 300 tickets, and we have, $57 in the bank? Where did the money go? We go back to try to figure it out, and if all of these bank statements and summaries were filled out incorrectly, we're lost. We can't track the money. I had one just recently. How often does it happen in our region nowadays? Very, very rarely do I send you back or you back any bank summaries and bank statements, because I've been whipping that hard for a long time. But every so often, someone in here sends me their bank summary. Why they send it to me, I don't know. It should just go to your regional. And I get these and I look at them. I had one just last week, right, Mr. Big Al? And I looked at it and I said, what the heck is this? I don't understand one thing on this bank summary. I don't understand. All these checks were paid out, money went in, deposit, money. So what is that deposit for? I don't know what difference was made. At least money went in the bank, not out of the bank. That's not good enough. We need to know what all the credits are and what all the debits are. So there will be a checklist. Okay, so moving forward. I'm going to tell you that a lot of you have a local association, but I've asked some of you, can you send me the names of the people on your association? And it's like, yeah, let me work on that. Seriously. So at some point, you got a group of people together and called them your local association, but that's about all there is to it. Some of you are a little more organized. You actually can send me the names, but you have no real rules or organization to it. It's just a list of names of people you call your organization. We had this in my own area on Long Island. The local association was a list of names, and they were struggling to sell tickets. And one day they were struggling to sell tickets to a local, and I calculated in my own meager brain, wait a minute, if all your association members bought their tickets, we should have a lot more tickets sold than this. And they said, well, some of them buy tickets and some of them don't. You have no ticket requirement for your association? Well, we have a requirement. Okay, well, again, I'll repeat, you should have a lot more tickets sold. Well, we have a requirement, but we don't enforce it. Well, then it's not a requirement. Anyway, long story short, we ended up removing that local coordinator. We're having trouble finding a replacement. Sue and I took over to try to reformulate it, form a new association, get a new mindset going, and we had everyone fill out a local association agreement. There's something magical about signing your name to an agreement and saying you're part of this organization. And yes, I am going to pre-purchase in advance my tickets for every event, on and on and on. So the very next thing I did was have an association meeting. And I said, what do you guys want in terms of training? We don't have enough GPT trainings. Why? Why haven't you been scheduling them? Because we can't sell enough tickets. I said, all right, let's do a GPT training. We organized one. We put it out there. I printed the tickets. I notified everyone in the association that at this week's UBP meeting, every one of you, when you walk in, will have an envelope with your name on it, with your required tickets on it. Please come prepared to buy your tickets. And at that UBP, at the end, we announced to the crowd there was a GPT, and we had 3 tickets to sell. That was it. It was a sellout before we even had a blink. So the association has to mean something, but more than that, the reason I put this slide up here is every Speakers Bureau member must be a member of the local association, and not just a member in good standing. And so we have right now in my local area a former local coordinator for our area and a certified trainer for our area, who this week I notified everyone in my area that we will no longer allow them to speak at our UBPs or conduct any training. Why? Because they won't support the local GMTSS. And it's a requirement. It's in the career manual, and I have no problem with it. You want to go out and capitalize off the GMTSS and be a trainer and make money, but you won't support your own local area and it's dying? Are you kidding me? You know, 3 tickets, $90, 1 for yourself, and 2, give them away if you have to. It's a tax deduction. If you can't do that, you're out, and that's a requirement. And all of you should stick to that. If you have any problem with it, if you're intimidated because somebody is kind of a, you know, a big hullabaloo and you don't want to go there, then you call us and we'll help you with that. And it's a pleasant conversation. We'll just call them up and say, hey, come on, you know, you got to support the area. And if you don't, we always play the blame game. It's out of our hands. It's a corporate policy, and I'm going to have to take you off but we'll help you with that. But it has to be. So all Speakers Bureau members must be a member in good standing, meaning they buy the tickets, and meaning they buy them the way you spelled it out in the local coordinator agreement. If you have a local seminar tomorrow in your area, that speaker, in all cases, probably has to buy their tickets tomorrow for the local that's going on in January, February, or March. They don't buy them at some point. They don't get to do that just because they're big and famous. This is the way the association works. That keeps you a member in good standing. So if you got people who are lagging on that and you're always chasing them down to try to get this ticket money in and it's tedious, then you call us and we'll try to help you fix that. Okay, let's move on. Here's a question for you. Who thinks we should cancel all the regional conventions? I'm just curious, by a show of hands, how many in here think we should cancel all the regionals? Cancel all the regionals. Cancel the regionals. Why? I mean, I don't know. I mean, cancel the why wouldn't we cancel them? Because it's stupid? Because they're probably the primary, most important event of the entire year in your area. Would everybody agree with that? Would we all agree that nobody wants to cancel regional conventions, right? You will deteriorate from the top down so fast if you cancel your regional convention, you won't even be able to blink. But here's a problem that we have right now. And I'm just going to be honest with you because this is the inner sanctum and we're all in the same game and we're the managers and we're the leaders and this is stuff we talk about when we're in amongst ourselves. Every regional convention in Market America declined in ticket sales last year. And I'm willing to bet that you're thinking back on your own. South Florida had an amazing regional, but it was less tickets than the year before. Northeast Regional, we had the chickens and the ducks and everything else. Ticket sales every regional went down in ticket sales. We can't have that. And there's a lot of reasons why that is, but we're going to help to change that with a new policy that we're dead on serious about enforcing, and I hope you guys agree that it's a smart change, and it's very simple. Let me tell you that in the Northeast region, in September and October, we had 13 local seminars in advance of our November regional convention. We sold 2,700 local seminar tickets at those September and October local seminars. We sold 67 tickets to the regional convention at all of those seminars combined, okay? And our regional tickets went down. You wonder why. And you talk to the local coordinators, and I get it. I've been a local coordinator. It's hard. You got to make your event go. The only chance I have to sell my local seminar tickets is when I got the crowd and the captive audience. What am I going to do? It's confusing. I got 3 events to sell. I got the local, I got the regional, I got the next corporate event. What am I supposed to do, Phil? Well, we have a new policy, and that policy is at the last local that you have prior to your regional convention, you can't sell tickets to a local seminar happening the following year in January or whenever it is. For us, these September and October locals were selling tickets to local seminars in January 2020 and not selling tickets to the biggest event of the year happening imminently a few weeks later. It's wrong. And it shouldn't happen. And we're not going to let it happen. So imagine if 2,700 tickets worth of money was in the pockets of all the people in the Northeast, and the only ticket to buy was the regional and moved to the regional. We would have sold a lot more tickets, but more importantly, we would have gotten a lot more people there, and it would have served all of us well. So the quandary is, but wait a minute now, we go back to, you're still putting me in a precarious situation, Roy. I still have to sell my local seminar tickets. I get that. But don't put the pressure on yourself. You can still do it if you want, but my recommendation is this is not the time to bring Jim Winkler in with the $3,000 honorarium. This is a time to maybe do an all-star event for us in January 2020. So in September, you're not selling tickets to the local. You're selling the regional. At the regional, we will aggressively promote your January local through ticket sale announcements from the stage, in the hallway, at your UVPs. And what you'll be selling is an all-star event. No pressure financially. You don't have to come up with thousands of dollars, airfare, airport transfers, meal money, and everything else. All you got to do is pay for a room rental and ask a few people to step up and volunteer an hour of their time to do an hour of training that day, and you'll get right back on track. Now, you don't have to follow that suggestion, but that's what we're going to tell you to do. And it's our belief, and I've discussed this with a number of people sitting in this room, as well as amongst ourselves, and it's our belief that this is going to help us turn ticket sales at regional conventions and move them back up in the other direction where we need them to go. So, there you go. So the suggestion is to have an all-star event. I'm running out of time here. How much time do I have? Timekeeper person? 7 minutes. 7 minutes. Okay, some odds and ends. Every local seminar, district, I think it's always been that way with districts pretty much. I mean, if it's not, the same rule would apply, but yes. Local seminars, you have to reconcile those events within 20 days of the event. Not 20 business days, 20 days of the event. Reconcile the event means you settle all financial obligations relative to the event, including your own payment if you would do a payment, right? You get a percentage, local coordinators. Is any local coordinator? No, you get a percentage, right? We all know this? Yeah. Do you all pay it to yourself? Not everybody does. And when it becomes a problem is when someone has been a local coordinator for a year or 2 years or 3 years, and they've decided it's time for someone else to take over or whatever, and the person takes over, and we feel like we got a very healthy local seminar area. We've got a lot of money in the bank in case we need equipment or we want to have an event or something. And they say, well, wait a minute now. I know there's $6,000 in the account, but I'm writing myself a check for $5,584. Wow. What? You're leaving us $16? Why? Well, I haven't paid myself recently for about 2 years. What? And then, we've got a couple of choices there. Just agree to that, and on the honor system, and go, okay, well, write yourself the check, or I don't know how, maybe we should make sure. It sounds like a lot of money. And where did you come up with that figure? And now everything has to stop, and all these busy people have to go start looking things up and going back to bank statements, trying to figure out, did you make a profit, didn't you make a profit, how much was owed, how much wasn't owed? Really? No, we're not going to do it anymore. So you have to reconcile the event within 20 days. If you don't pay yourself, you don't pay yourself. You're not going to go back later and tell us you forgot. Pay yourself. Take the money out. If you need to lend it back or something, lend it back if you have to, but you can't leave the money in the account. Everybody good with that? All right. Local seminar has a profit, but the association is negative. Now, Tom talked about this. Stacy mentioned this. You're operating a business within the business. You have to be profitable. If you have a local seminar, I'm telling you right now, the day of the event, you should know pretty much exactly where you stand, because I have an event with thousands and thousands of people, and on that Saturday morning, I know just about exactly where I stand in that event, and if I know on that one, then you certainly have to know on your event with 150 to 300 people. So the event is done, and you have a profit, a net profit on the event, and a percentage of that goes to the association. You can't continue to just overspend that money. If your event generated a profit to your association of $400, you can't spend $1,100 after the event on dinner and drinks and parties and stuff. Jim and Ton gave you the solution, and we've done it on Long Island for many, many years. People are welcome to come out with the guest speaker. It's a privilege. It's great. It's exciting to get to spend some time with the guest speaker after the event and unwind and get some inside info and old stories and stuff like that. But you have to pay for your own dinner. Okay? Now, if we made thousands of dollars and the association can afford it, great. But we see far too often where did that money come from? You lost $800 on this local. Well, I took it out of the bank. Well, let me look at the last local. You lost $600 on the last local. So you're now spending all your association's money on dinner and drinks after the event, and then the time is going to come for sure when you call me and say, can we buy some equipment? Sure. Do you have the money in the bank? Yeah. Don't you pay for it? Who pays for it if we don't have the money? Well, you're not running your area as a business You're wasting all the money on frivolous things, and don't do it anymore, okay? W-9 forms. How many of you don't use W-9 forms? A couple of you. Here's the reason you have to start using W-9 forms, all right? I saw at least one person raise their hand who I know for a fact has been audited by the IRS. I'm just throwing that in. Here's one thing. Let's say you have 4 local seminars a year. You pay out $2,500 honorarium for all 4 locals. How much is that? Math genius? 10,000. You had 2 GPTs and 2 basic 5s, and you paid out another $4,000 to speakers. You paid it out. You spent you collected the money for the tickets. The speaker doesn't sell the tickets. You do, right? So it went in your account, and then you paid them the profit. Let's say that was 4,000 more, 1,000 for each. How much is that now? 14,000. You have an AV guy that does your local seminar, and let's say you pay him $250 per local. You had 4 locals. That's another $1,000. Okay? Now we're up to what, $15,000? Let's just stop there. You don't use W-9 forms. You don't send one to the AV guy. You don't send one to the GPT, the basic 5 speakers, or the local seminar speakers. And you do your taxes, and you don't report that $15,000 as income. You're evading taxes, about $6,000 in taxes you didn't pay that you owe. That's your income. That's your income. And you have to report it as income. Nobody wants to do that. It's very simple. You go to online, you download a W-9 form, you send it to the speaker, they put their name, their social security number, and a signature on it, and they send it back. I don't send a W-9 form, I don't send the honorarium until they send the W-9 form. Very simple. I have you, Jim, hey, it's Phil. Listen, I got your honorarium check all printed out on my desk with an envelope. I can't find your W-9. I think I emailed it to you a week or 2 back. Can you get that into me so I can get this check in the mail? Are you getting where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
Okay. Don't send it. Don't do it. Or it could be the back end. Maybe you sent them the honorarium advance. You forgot about now the event is over and you think of it. Jim, hey Jim, I got $1,800 back end check here. I can't find that W-9 to save my life. I think you sent it in, but I don't know what happened to it. Okay. So you want to get that in. I'm out of time. What is the goal? The goal, Ton, the goal? The goal is to go from this to this. Okay?
Yeah.
That is the goal for all of us.